It's your girl, the Grown Woman Gamer, and today we're coming at you with another fire commentary. You know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, comment whether you agree with me or not, and of course share if you care. So today we're going to be talking about what I think is going to happen at the end of the season in the Eastern Conference. I don't know if I'm going to pick a winner today, but I'm going to at least go over my top 4 picks for who I think is going to win or be the best contenders to win the East. So it's been an amazing season, as I've said in previous videos. The Eastern Conference used to be called the Leastern Conference. That is no more because there are so many stacked teams in the East. There are some great players in the East. There's a lot of competition in the East. And it's really a toss-up between the top, I would say, 8 teams. So just to recap, Miami right now is in the number 1 spot, 2 games ahead of Milwaukee. Milwaukee is 2 games ahead of Philadelphia, who's technically sort of tied with Boston for the number of wins, but Boston, it looks like, has played more games than Philadelphia. And then you have Chicago, that's just 1 game behind Boston. Then you have Cleveland, that's only 2 games behind Chicago. Toronto, which is technically tied with Cleveland, but Cleveland probably has won more games against Toronto perhaps, and they're weighted at the number 6 spot. Then you have Brooklyn, 3 games behind Toronto. Charlotte, 1 game behind Brooklyn. And then Atlanta, 1 game behind Charlotte. Now, all of the other teams below, Washington, New York, the Knicks, Indiana, Detroit, and Orlando, given the number of games that are left in the season, unless something catastrophic happens to Charlotte or Atlanta or Brooklyn, it is very unlikely that Washington or the Knicks will push into the 10th spot. So I think we have the Eastern Conference pretty solidified as far as the players that are going to actually be in the play-in tournament, as well as the people that are going to the only thing that's really undecided is who the 7th and 8th spot will be going into the playoffs. With that said, there's been some standout events that have occurred in the East. I think the biggest one, the first thing that happened, was Kyrie Irving and his vaccination status, which has really impacted the East. Coming into the season, we thought that we were going to have a healthy Kyrie, a healthy Kevin Durant, and at the time, I'm not sure if James Harden was healthy. He may have been nursing the hamstring injury, but we expected that he would be able to play pretty soon to the beginning of the season, if not at the very beginning of the season. And with a team like that, honestly, they, for me, would be a favorite. If they had all those players playing with the supporting cast that they had, Kevin Durant being healthy and being, in my opinion, the best scorer in the NBA, I would have made them my favorite to win the whole thing. But lots of things happened in the last 4 to 5 months. We had Kyrie Irving, who made it very clear that under no circumstances was he willing to take the vaccine. We had James Harden, and this is more recent, kind of force his way out or let the Brooklyn Nets know that he did not intend to sign an extension with them. He was going to take his chances in free agency, and so they decided to get a piece for him instead of have to kind of bid on him essentially at the end of the season. I know that I don't like using that term because that sounds kind of strange, but if they hadn't traded for some player for James Harden, what would have happened is they would have made it all the way through the season, and then they would have had to compete with other teams to get James Harden to sign, which would have cost them a lot more than maybe getting a piece knowing that he wasn't happy, and given the chemistry between him and Kyrie wasn't really there. And allegedly, the relationship between him and Steve Nash wasn't perfect either. And frankly, he stated clearly that the team he wanted to go to when he left the Houston Rockets was the Philadelphia 76ers, but it just wasn't in the cards at the time. And we know Daryl Morey, who previously was the general manager of the Houston Rockets, is now the general manager of the 76ers, so they have that relationship. And it just, everything kind of came together to support him ending up on the team that he alleges that he wanted to be on. So now we have the Nets with Ben Simmons, who apparently has a lower back injury that's preventing him from full contact basketball. And then we have Kevin Durant, who is healthy by all accounts and raining on dudes. I mean, he had a game, I think, the other night where he had 50 some odd points. And the particular game I'm thinking about, this is not the 50-point game, but the game where he was playing against the Dallas Mavericks and the Nets were playing against the Dallas Mavericks. That was great, seeing him and Luka kind of go back and forth. Just reminds me of how amazing of a shooter Kevin Durant is. It's just so fun to watch him play, especially if he has a good kind of team to go up against. But Kyrie couldn't play because of the vaccination issue, and Ben Simmons is not playing either. So it was a much closer game than it probably would have been had they had Ben Simmons in at full capacity and healthy Kyrie helping him. And they only lost by a very few points. So when you think about what they may be able to do together, I just feel like it would be amazing. And they would be my favorite. But because there are so many X factors with the Brooklyn Nets, I put them on my list of contenders. If you have players, there's a few players, if you have them on your team, you're always going to be contending. Kevin Durant's one of those people. LeBron James, I'm still going to stand by the fact that if he was on a halfway decent team, let's not go there. We're going to leave that one. We'll leave that for another video. But historically, we know that there are certain players, and we can mostly all agree that Kevin Durant is one of those players. If you have him on your team, you have a good chance of winning the game. There's some other teams that have really impressed me this year that I don't know if they'll win a championship this year or win the East this year, but they've done really well. Cleveland, to me, is one of those teams. No one expected Cleveland to come in with the young core group of guys that they have and be in the 6th spot now on March 18th. No one had any expectations for them, in fact, except that they were kind of in a rebuilding phase, but they've come together and they've developed chemistry with one another, and they have some really passionate basketball players on the team. Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and it's really great to see. Whenever you see young players doing well early on in their career, for me, a person that loves basketball, it's always really great to see and inspiring. And I hope that they do well. I think if they make it to the second round, people would be pretty impressed by that. But whatever team they go up against, guaranteed they're going to give it their all, and they're going to do their best to make it challenging for the team that they face in the first round, or any round in the playoffs. So we can't count them out. Then we have Boston. Boston, to me, is like this really strange franchise. They always have a halfway decent team. Like, if I think back, for the most part, with the exception of maybe a few years, Boston has had a decent team. It's never really surprising when they make it to the playoffs, even now. But for some reason, it's hard to see them as the team to beat. I don't know if it's because there's something very specific missing, or maybe it's because they're really young compared to some of the other teams that are more heavy favorites to win the East. But I just feel like there is no doubt that they're a great team and that they'll present a challenge to any other team that they face, whether it be the Milwaukee Bucks, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Nets, the Heat, Cleveland. There are no teams on this list that we can say definitively that Boston can't beat. But for some reason, and I can't quite put my hand on it, they aren't a favorite to win, although they can beat any of these teams on any given night. I think maybe it has to do with winning a 7-game series and what that takes, because I've said this before and I stand by this. Winning in the postseason has as much to do with your mind as it does your body. And so it's not checkers, it's definitely chess, and you have to integrate a lot of information that you've picked up over the course of your career and your season in order to really push through the postseason in basketball. It's a different type of animal than the regular season. And so whatever that thing is that pushes people over the top, and you can kind of even see it happening. Like if you look back to Giannis from last year, you could see that something was happening for him where something went off in his head, and he knew that there was something that he needed to do in order to win that championship. Plus he was a little bit lucky too in terms of some of the teams that weren't there. But for some reason, I haven't seen that light bulb go off in the Boston Celtics. And maybe it'll happen this year. You never know. I'm not counting them out because, as I said, there's not a single team on this list that the Boston Celtics can't beat. But it's just, again, some element. Maybe it's an intellectual element, a physical element. Maybe it's a certain type of player. Maybe they need somebody in the post who's a little bit more agile. I don't know. It's just, like I said, something missing. But we, again, can't count them out. I would say the same thing about Chicago. We can't say they don't have the same history as Boston. This will be the first year in a long time where we really take them seriously as a playoff contender. They're a completely different roster in many ways. They still have Zach LaVine, but they have DeMar DeRozan, they have Vucevic, they have Lonzo Ball, they have Alex Caruso. They have a lot of different players. They're, to me, one of the most, if not the most balanced teams in the NBA. And they are going to present a challenge for any team. When I initially saw them at the beginning of the year, I was thinking this team could win a championship because they are smart enough to do it. They have the physicality to do it. They have a deep enough bench. They're well coached. And I'm not ready to say that they're my favorite to win a championship, but at the end of the day, they're good enough to win a championship if everything elevates at the right time. So this team will have to essentially come into the playoffs with a different energy, with a different ferocity. There are enough veteran players on this team that they understand the moment, and they understand that these moments do not come easily. So DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, those two, and Vucevic, those three guys actually, if they raise the level of play, the level of mindfulness, and keep everyone moving in the same direction so that they have like a powerful enough energy to overcome a team like Brooklyn, it's possible. Or overcome a team like Milwaukee, again, it's possible. Probable, maybe, I don't know. It's a toss-up with Chicago and Boston. And then that leaves the other three teams that a lot of people feel are more heavy favorites. I'm going to cover Miami first because, frankly, even though this is one of the best teams in the NBA, to me, they're not as interesting. Basically, you have Jimmy Buckets, or Jimmy Butler, leading a team with a lot of great shooters and defensive players. So you have Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, who I know is really managing the basketball for them, but I still see Jimmy Butler as their leader. And then you have Tyler Hero, who is a good candidate for Most Improved Player of the Year. You have Duncan Robinson, who can shoot. You have a bunch of other good supporting pieces. And this is a team that is extremely well coached by Eric Spoelstra. And again, they are pretty balanced across the board. And whatever is necessary physically to win a basketball game, there is someone on this team that has that skill set. So it will literally come down to execution with this team. So if on any given night, as long as they execute on a good plan, on both sides of the ball, they are in just as good a position to win a championship as any team because they're ticking like all these various boxes. Now, there, in my opinion, is not a standout superstar on this team, but what we're learning more and more is that having that standout superstar is not a guarantee that you're going to progress in the postseason. Basketball is changing a lot, and it's moving back to this more balanced team, and I think that the Miami Heat have that. And again, if they execute, they have just as good a chance to win a championship as anyone else. Then you have Philadelphia. To me, I'm not sold on this team, and I'll tell you why. This is probably going to be the most controversial thing that I say in this video. I've watched James Harden play throughout his career, and I'm not going to knock him for the first 5 years of his career. When you're young, if you win a championship, great, but I think there's certain things you have to learn in those first 5 years or so to get to the point where you understand what it really takes to win in a conference and also to win a championship. And we can't expect a 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, even 24-year-old to completely master that and then be able to execute on it that early in their career. If they do, kudos, much respect. People like Magic Johnson and LeBron James, they're just a different breed of player. And it took LeBron longer than that. But at the end of the day, I'm not knocking the first 5 years of James Harden's career. But beyond that, James Harden has had some struggles showing up in games where it really counted. We saw that illustrated when they played in the game against the Nets. Now, you might say, well, grown woman gamer. Listen, that game didn't count. It didn't matter whether they won that game or not. But it's about the pressure, the psychological pressure that's on you in these moments. So it's a good kind of trial run of what the playoffs will be like, because they're playing against a team where there's an emotional charge because of a backstory coming into the game. We all know about the James Harden, Ben Simmons switcheroo, trade, whatever. And you would think, because you said you would rather be on this team, that you're going to come out and show people why you would rather play for the Philadelphia 76ers than play with Kevin Durant, who is arguably one of the best, if not the best, basketball players currently playing in the NBA. And he didn't do that. He was 3 for 17. He turned the ball over excessively. And we've also seen him in other moments in the postseason just lose and kind of break down when it didn't even make sense. I mean, sometimes it was literally being handed him on a silver platter and the man couldn't rise to the occasion. So I'll have to see it to believe it. It's hard for me to bank on James Harden being consistent in the postseason because he hasn't done that. Don't get me wrong. James Harden has had some standout games in the postseason. James Harden is a prolific scorer. James Harden is an excellent three-point shooter. James Harden is a great assister of the basketball. There are even some moments when on defense he does things that are really smart. And they have Doc Rivers and they have Joel Embiid, who is my favorite for MVP this year. But all together, if James Harden is managing the basketball, he has to be on point for them to win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if he's not on point, Embiid giving you what we can guarantee Embiid will give you every night, which is somewhere between 35 and 45 points, 8 and 16 rebounds, 2 blocks, maybe a steal, and maybe somewhere between 4 and 8 assists. That's great, but that's not enough to win a championship. You have to have somebody else, and you have to have a team of people around you. So I will say this. If the 76ers, Freudian slip, if the 76ers win a championship, it will have a lot more to do with Doc Rivers coaching than anything else. And if you look at the story of the 76ers season this year, their success has a lot to do with his coaching if you really break it down, and Joel Embiid. So we'll see. And then, of course, you have Milwaukee, and this is where I'm going to end. Milwaukee, I'm going to say that if the Nets are not together, meaning if Kyrie can't play, if Ben Simmons is not playing, then the Milwaukee Bucks for me are the favorite to win this year. Again, I hate to say it because it's not that I dislike this team. I just think that I'm not going to say boring, but there are other teams that would kind of be a little bit more exciting to see them win. But as far as winning the East, Milwaukee is the team to beat. They won last year. They still have Giannis, who is unstoppable. And there's no one on any of the teams that we just discussed who can consistently stop Giannis. Can some of these people slow him down? Can Bam Adebayo slow him down? Yes. Can Joel Embiid slow him down? Yes. But oftentimes slowing him down involves these people getting in foul trouble. So I don't see where any of these teams are more heavily favored to beat Milwaukee in a 7-game series. And Giannis takes basketball so seriously, even though watching him play is not the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life, but physically he's able to do things with the basketball, and they've been very quietly maintaining their position at the top of the Eastern Conference. And we have to look at the fact that they've already won one. It's right there. They know what it takes. They've been through that grind. I think it'll be a heck of a lot harder this year than it was last year, but again, they're my favorite. So these are my thoughts. I love you guys. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about basketball, one of my favorite things to talk about. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment, share if you care, and of course, please stay safe and stay blessed. I'm out.